Strategies panel. Today, I'm Melissa Benua, and I have my illustrious audience, my illustrious set of speakers here, and of course, our beautiful in-person audience. We will be attempting to do questions off of a thing called Slido. So if you go to slido.com and put in this number, I'm going to read it, but only one time. It is 350-9961. You will be able to submit questions, and I will have them on my phone here. I promise I'm not texting. And we will answer questions. If that is not working for whatever reason, we will fall back to hands and verbal questions, but we're going to try Slido first. Yes, we're starting to get questions in. Thank you, everybody. Please stick them in there. If you want to tag your name, great. If you don't, not required. You can also upvote other people's questions if there's something you want to ensure that we answer. So those are the logistics of what we got going on here. And I would like for my lovely panel to introduce themselves. Janna, thanks.
You're welcome. See, we have one brain. Did you introduce yourself?
I said my name.
All right, fine. Hi.
Don't matter.
I'm Janna Loeffler. I'm a director of engineering at mParticle, and I work with Melissa, so she also works at mParticle.
Hi, I'm Shailaja Patel. I'm a principal automation engineer with IBM. I work in the Chief Information Office.
Hey everyone, Adam Satterfield, helped lead up testing, DevOps, and cloud delivery for global payments.
He will be Adam 1.
And I am Adam 2. Adam Auerbach. I am the head of testing for EPAM systems.
Wonderful.
All right. Thank you, all of you, for being here. We got questions streaming in. I love it. Top rated question right now is from Matt. The question is, the keynote, I'm assuming Janna's keynote, spoke on not forcing teams into new tools necessarily. How do you guide teams who are comfortable with perhaps older technologies into new mindsets?
Ooh.
I guess Janna should start.
Maybe I can start on this one. So as I mentioned in the keynote, one of the things that I did was make the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard. So by selecting tools that are in the language that you are going to be coding in, first of all, that's super helpful. Second of all, I don't force people. I will usually give them help. Like I'll embed engineers on their teams. I'll offer to pair with them. I'll say, these are all the wonderful advantages. I mean, why are you choosing that tool in the first place? You should have a reason why you're choosing that tool in the first place. It should provide some additional value to you. So if you can figure out what their needs are, figure out how that tool meets their needs and explain that to them and say, look, we'll help you get started on this new tool, documentation, training, whatever it takes, you're making the right thing easy. And you just stop supporting the old technology. So make it hard. Anybody else have any thoughts on?
I like to use with them. I know we actually talk about that in a tutorial. So, instead of pushing something on someone, try to figure out, what's in it for them, right? How are we going to make their job, their life easier? One of the things I like to use is, especially when working with developers for automation is, hey, if we get this right, it's less time spent doing this. It's less late Friday nights. It's less weekend work. So really just trying to approach it from them and actually help them understand why this is going to be helpful for them instead of just, trying to push it from top down.
Try and make it their idea.
Yeah.
So you may have a tool in mind, but don't implement it yet. Start talking to people and be like, well, what do you think about this? And then start to get that buy-in that they feel comfortable with.
And maybe the last thing is just making sure that the barrier to adoption is very low, right? So we're working with a large financial service company. We're driving towards continuous delivery, and every team starts trying to implement their own CI/CD tool set, right? But as an enterprise, if we have something that's off the shelf, it's fully documented, there's training, that's definitely one way to help push people to making the right choice. But if they want to go a different way, okay. But, there are timelines and costs that they have to be able to stay within. So.
All right. Thank you, panel. Our next question is from a mysterious person named Candy. What metrics should I track for ensuring high quality in both my products and in my development process?
I started the last one, so I'm going to kick this one off to Adam because I know he texted about this. Adam 1
Yeah.
or Adam 2.
Perhaps it's Adam 1.
Adam 1.
Yeah. All right. So, wow, metrics. I mean, how long do y'all have? So, there's a couple of favorite ones that I like. I'm really big on value stream metrics. Anything and everything that you can measure to help the teams deliver better, deliver faster, and to find the bottlenecks. So, one of the ones that I really like is defect return rate. Right? How much time are your developers spending going back and forth with your testers on a defect that may not actually be a defect or something that's not documented well? There's no screenshots, there's no information, because that can really eat up, really honestly days and days worth of time, especially if you've got a testing team that is not, located in the same time zone as your development team. So that's a big one that I like. Really anything that kind of focuses on that value stream is really where it's at.
So that is a good metric. I like defect containment. So you should be able to see how effective your testing team is at finding defects and how effective are you at finding those defects in the sprint. And then the second one is rework from an engineering perspective. So maybe you're really good at finding all the defects in the sprints, but your teams are spending 30, 40% of their time fixing defects. So you really want to, there are a lot of metrics, but you want to focus on the metrics that are going to show that there's some ROI, right? So if we have defect containment that's 80%, that means 20% of our defects are being found in production or UAT. Well, that's lost time, that's effort. And if you can make that less, that's a real savings for the business. So you want to focus on metrics that your business is going to care about because that's where they're going to give you support to make changes.
I think I can add another thing, continuing on to what Adam said, is traceability. What I've come to realize is your tests need to trace back to the requirements, and I've seen a lot of cases that they actually don't. And that kind of does help because the test cases that are written are never tied to your requirements, and there's a point where you reach and you're like, okay, what am I testing? Or are these tests even valid over the years? I think that tends to pile up. So I think that's a good metric as well.
So I'm going to be the probably oddball on this. I hate metrics. I hate measuring things. What I do like to do is assess things. And there's a difference. A metric is to measure and have a standard that you're measuring upon. Assessing is to see where we are at in our process to continuously improve. And so the way I approach this is by having two sets of metrics. I have a leading indicator and a trailing indicator, which helps show me if I do this, then this should happen. So I'm assessing how things flow through, how what I'm doing is actually impacting, and is it having the impact that I thought it would be. That's how I show, are my processes successful? Is my quality strategy successful? Because if I do these things, I should be able to see these results. And so I look at trends, I look at different things and the different changes that I'm going in to see if it's making the impact that I want it to.
So you do like metrics.
Do you know what metrics are? Metrics are something that developers turn into a game to win prizes. So the only thing I would add here is if you're going to do metrics, do them in pairs so at least you're shaping the game. You want a metric about how often you deploy to production, you're going to get 1,000 really crappy, teeny tiny little deploys to production every day.
And I think also the matrix should not be top down, because sometimes you're just aiming to achieve those results rather than actually achieving the matrix or actually trying to do the right thing.
Developers love games. Lots of questions in here. Okay, next question, please. Are we good? Any other?
We're good.
All right. What has been challenging when developing an automation test strategy? From Anonymous.
Adam 1, you want to start off?
Getting leadership to pay for it. To be honest, either that or, someone from a leadership level decides to automate all the things without really understanding what is actually valuable to automate. So that to me, so really for me, it's managing up, right, when it comes to developing a new automation strategy or trying to implement a tool. And so if you don't have the ability to manage up, it's something that I would definitely work on from a skill set standpoint.
I think the other thing also I've come to realize is a lot of people say test automation, and a lot of people don't realize what test automation means too. So I think, or I don't know how many of you here actually still continue to do manual testing. Like I know there are a lot of people who still do manual testing even today. So I think that's something to keep in mind when you start building a product at the beginning in the strategy, that automation should be a part of that strategy.
Finding people with the skill set. Developing a test automation strategy is different than implementing a test automation strategy. And so you have to have a different mindset of going through and asking, what are the questions? What problems am I trying to solve to build out that strategy?
A quick note, I love how many questions we have in the slide out. It is amazing. Please remember that you can upvote and use those upvotes, because I don't know that we will get to all of these questions. So please use your upvote ability so you will guide. I am reading from the top upvoted questions first.
Oh, and I'll add something. So I know, at least I am, I think Adam, you might be as well. We are on the TechWell Slack instance, the hub. So what we can do too is, since these are written down, we'll take any questions that we couldn't answer here, and one of us will answer them in the Slack channel.
All right, next question from Anna. How are testing teams structured in your organizations? Different or same people responsible for manual, test automation, and automation results review?
Adam, too.
So we actually had this debate because we have some teams that are divided where manual testers report into different people than automation. And we have since changed that so everyone is together, because now with the evolution of a quality engineer where manual testers need to be able to do some level of automation, it only makes sense to bring everybody together, as well as making sure that we're not disvaluing functional testers from automation people. So we have brought them together.
This is where I get the evil stares to say, we don't have testers in our organization. But we did that purposefully. We have everybody in our I shouldn't say everybody, but anybody that you would consider usually a tester is an engineer. So what we have done is we honestly believe in equal pay for your skill sets, because we know historically testers get paid less, that everybody's an engineer and they may have a specialty. So even our DevOps are engineers, our developers are engineers, our testers are engineers, and they all report into a technical leadership of some sort. I'm a director. I have developers that report into me, but I also have a quality background, and that, so that's one thing that we wanted to do, is even that playing field. And it does come with some expectations. You have an engineering title. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to code, but you have to be able to read code or, make sense of it.
Yeah, and from our side, we're decentralized, so all the testers actually report up technically through the Scrum Master, from an application team standpoint. So they've got their manager, but really they don't take any, guidance other than, skill set guidance. And then we use a community of practice to bring everyone together. And that's really been a big game changer for us, is from a knowledge share standpoint, because we were centralized, and when we kind of broke that, there was a bit of lost communication. And so we've had to really work, very diligently to bring that together.
I think we do that too. Like we have everybody reporting into a Scrum Master, so the developers and the tester report into the Scrum Master, and then you have a separate manager, but everybody just goes through the Scrum Master for us as well.
We're also tiny.
Yeah, problems of scale.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? All right. Next question from Anonymous. There's a lot of talk about end-to-end UI-based testing ? Which is very inefficient and ineffective. How can teams shift left and test from the pipeline?
From the pipeline? How about we start testing before the pipeline? How do teams test? teams start to shift left? Well, honestly, one of my biggest things for shifting left when it comes to automation is to honestly look at the tests that you have. You're going to have more resistance to shift left to bring it into the pipeline the longer your test suites run. So, there was the comment here of UI testing being maybe not as efficient or effective. Well, there are ways to test the UI without having to load the browser, things like that. That may be good enough for your build pipeline. And then you can take that. That doesn't mean those tests are worthless. What we do is we then run them outside of our build pipeline on a cadence. So we're still getting that information in, but it's not holding up any of our releases. So that helps keep the build pipeline up, running, and still provides those quality gates.
And I think on the UI test being, I agree and I disagree. UI tests can be brittle because if you change a little bit on your screen, things tend to break. I'm sure a lot of people have had experience. So I think one thing that are not brittle as UI are API tests. And I think that's something that's ignored by more than 80% of the teams. Those tests are not brittle. And basically what you see on your screen is rendered by those APIs. So I think that's something teams need to probably look at is, do we or can we have API tests?
So on that, I think that's a really great point, and it started an idea in my head, which is I have a pretty hard, fast rule that the only things that can be in the build pipelines are things under my control. You have to be testing my code, my platform, the things that are under my control. Now, you may say, well, the UI is under my control. For all intents and purposes, yes, but the browser is not. And so anything that I can control, those API tests, even the code behind it to understand, I run it headless, so I'm not testing the browser. And that's really what it comes down to is, are you testing your own code or are you testing somebody else's code?
Yeah, and I would challenge the statement just a little bit and, maybe kind of dig in as to why anonymous person feels that their tests are brittle. I mean, we had some similar problems, but then we started using an application like Thousand Eyes. For folks who are not aware of what that does is it actually monitors the paths that users will take through the application, and it can build tests based off of that. And that's what we would wind up using for our UI-based tests. And we didn't add them into the regular, production build pipeline, right? They ran as a separate run. So I would say even because something might be brittle or it might take a long time, don't discount it as part of the overall strategy. I do see some teams say, well, it takes a long time, so we're just going to completely get rid of it and only focus on unit tests. And that can be a recipe for disaster, to be honest. So definitely recommend, looking at it as a more holistic viewpoint.
And there's a really great open source utility called Helenium that you can use that does self-healing. Shameless plug.
Nice. Nice.
Helenium. Yes.
All right. Thank you all.
Quick question. What about the older applications that don't have API layers?
The question in the back is, what about older applications that don't have API layers? How do you test those?
Definitely you're going to be restricted, right? Because you are going to have to do more UI testing. The question is now, how far can you start to shift them? To Janna's point, can you segment some of that test suite? So at least there's a smoke test or something to, maybe you have to stub out the integration point so it can run in development. So you are going to be limited. It is going to take longer. You might have to have it run on a separate process, but maybe I would start with looking at what problem are you trying to solve? Are tests failing? Are you not seeing defects until everything comes to the integration environment? And so can we just start to get some number of tests running earlier in the process so dev is not just waiting multiple sprints to know that something doesn't work?
Yeah, and one of the things you can do to help with that as well is make sure you have effective test tagging, right? Understand what the purpose of the test is that you're running. So maybe it's a billing test, a login test, password reset or whatnot. And then you can select those. And a lot of even build pipelines will allow you to set those as parameters, right? So if you do have a major update to your billing, say, hey, I just want to run, these tests - billing, right? And it selects those tests out of your suite. So I think that's something we've had to do a lot. We still do a lot, in the financial technology world, old applications. So we run into that a lot as well.
I'm going to make a quick thing and then we'll move on to the next question. But when it comes to this, I usually ask, do I care? Do I care about what I'm testing? And that's a hard thing for a lot of testers to let go of, is sometimes you talk to your product owner and the business says, you know what, if that button's blue instead of green, I don't really care. Now, sometimes you do care because it's a branding thing. So do you really need to be running that UI test that checks to see if the button is blue or green if they don't really care? Maybe not so much. So really think about, too, the purposes behind your test and what you care about.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next question from Cody. Which is more effective, a dedicated automation team or test engineers who are responsible for automation in addition to their other responsibilities?
Neither.
Go for it. That's what I was going to say, so
okay.
go for it.
So if you're trying to be efficient, you're not going to have a separate team doing automation. Like that's just, if we're talking about agility, DevOps, engineering excellence, whatever you want to call it, the team needs to be able to do automation for themselves. But it shouldn't be like side of desk either. It should be a priority. And then if you're struggling, because we have some clients where the automation people are still doing manual testing, then this becomes the team's problem, and you need to recruit the engineers on the team to help with automation. But don't have a shared service doing automation, because they will be a bottleneck and they will slow you down, and then no one is going to get better for that.
Yeah, what he said.
I will add on to that question. Do you think it's worth having a separate team doing automation frameworks, or would you keep that within the DevOps scrub team, whatever you want to call it?
So I can speak to that exactly, because that's exactly what we do. We have a team that focuses on frameworks, and for us, it's a thing about compliance and standards, right? So we're financial technology. So for us, we have certain ways that we need to do accessibility testing that folks need to inherit, and having each team go and reinvent the wheel on trying to build those libraries and do that work is just completely ineffective. So for us, especially for very large shops, we've got several thousand testers, it makes sense.
This I agree with you, but it does sometimes become like a little bit of a holy war, right? Where a COE or COP or some shared service team, they create the framework, and then they're trying to force everybody to use it, and then it's a battle. So I agree, definitely financial services, or there's just certain capabilities that it's good for the enterprise to have a solution for. But if a team wants to pick a different tool, like they want to go to Cypress or they want to use Playwright versus Selenium, okay, like as long as they meet your standards, as long as you have guardrails that say, hey, if you have a framework, it needs to be able to integrate, and you need to be able to traceability, you need to be able to do these other things, go have at it. But I agree also, like an enterprise team does have value.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, there are definitely downsides in that it's a lot of overhead to, audit teams, make sure that they're doing the right thing. So, and it's one of those things that if you do go that route, you need to be committed to that route, because if you halfway commit and then you decide to change your mind later, no one's ever going to believe you if you try to go that route again. So, it's certainly not easy for sure.
You need to make sure that people can contribute.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have if you're at a large enterprise and you have all these automation people, and then there's one central team doing a framework, you need to be able to allow other people to create capabilities, to have some ownership, because
Source.
And that's exactly what we do.
Right? Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we have it on GitHub, and we have people allowed to check in and do all sorts of additions, and it's actually been great. We've actually been able to find people across the enterprise and pull into the automation team that wanted to grow into that role. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Shailaja, what do you guys do for frameworks?
I think we do have shared services, and you're right. The challenge that comes up with it is that, okay, why is a certain team giving us directions? That makes a little bit more sense for us. This is our requirement and it doesn't comply. So I think we started the concept of inner source, I think over a year and a half ago. And I think it's been tremendous. There are a lot of teams. I think it helps a lot of people who are interested in a skill and they're not able to do it where they are at, but if they want to go and contribute within your company, I think that gives them a great opportunity. So I think we inner source a lot.
Excellent. Thank you. Shifting tracks a little bit to hiring and careers. So from a hiring perspective, from Anonymous, can you share more about quality as a career, scare quotes are theirs, not mine, versus a stepping stone?
Hi, my name is Janna, and I've been in quality my entire career, which is over 20 years. I was been able to say that because then I don't have to completely divulge my age, but still give credibility to my answer. So yeah, I think it can be either. What I love about being in quality, and what I've always loved about being in quality, is I've made a career out of being in quality. I've done it. You can do it. However, I have watched other people start out in quality and decide, you know what, my passion is really coding. And so they went and became a developer and they figured that out because as a person in quality, you get to work with developers. You also get to work with project managers. You get to work with product owners, all of that. So you get that unique view into all of these different career opportunities and that real opportunity to go whichever way you want and discover your passion and run with it.
I agree. I have been in quality all my 8 years of working. I mean, it's too small compared to yours, but I have been in quality for 8 years, and I think I started off with it, and I was like, okay, let's go with it and see how it works, and then I kind of plugged into automation. So I kind of say this to a lot of I mentor a lot of juniors, and I say this to a lot of juniors, like, as a developer, it's cool, you can write code, but as a quality engineer, you can write code, you can automate, you can do all of those things being in quality. So I think it is, if you love it, I think you can make a career out of it.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm seeing a resurgence, right, in the need for quality engineers. And I think, in my opinion, some of it is the fact that we've got a certain, bracket of leaders that are leaving the industry, and the leaders that are coming up in the industry have come up working with testers. So I think there was a bit of a gap there, maybe 10 or so years ago, where we had people that didn't necessarily know what the role of a tester was, but now these technology leaders, they understand the importance of testing. And so I'm actually seeing in the market, right, a much greater need, right, for people with that quality skill set. So yeah, I mean, you can certainly make a career for it, and I honestly don't see it going anywhere anytime, right?
Agreed.
All right. Following up with that from, I'm assuming, a different Anonymous, but do you believe there is still value for beginners to learn code-heavy solutions, or would focusing on low-code / AI solutions like UiPath be a better investment? And I did not make that plug.
Do we have anybody from UiPath here?
Where's the UiPath?
Who asked that question?
I mean, I personally think, I could talk a lot about this. You need to learn the programming skills. The low code, no code solutions are a really great sales pitch, but
UiPath regrets that question.
yeah. I know there are a lot. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you need to understand coding principles. You need to understand architecture, especially what Jenna just said about like QA being a springboard. I've seen when I was at Capital One, it was some of the testers that learned like cloud formation templates and were the first like cloud engineers because of their programming skills and what they were trying to solve for testing, and then how that was a springboard for them. The no code, low code solutions are nice. Even like ChatGPT, right? I can go to ChatGPT, I can ask it to create me a Selenium test, but if I don't understand the Java code that's coming out, like, it's not going to be maintainable, it's not going to be scalable. So you need to have that background.
So they do have their low code does have its place. And I like to say its place is, okay, I can do this in low code. Now I'm going to try out my programming skills and see if I can get the exact same results and then throw out the low code solution. So that's pretty much about where I'm at. But I think it is essential to understand. It's only going to make you a better tester. I like to say, if you want to figure out, how something works, ask a developer. Now, if you really want to figure out how something works, ask a tester.
Maybe please don't think that those tools are going to save like manual testers' jobs and tell them like, oh, the manual testers don't have to learn engineering, that they could just use these tools. That will not work.
Very true.
Right.
And these are my opinions.
Yeah, we haven't been paid or are endorsed by anybody for these opinions. Yes. So reminder, get your last couple questions in. Use those upvotes because we only have time for maybe 2 more at most. 3 more. We've got 15 minutes.
No.
20 minutes? 30 minutes? Oh, I don't know how math works or time. So this is why everybody else is here. Great. We got plenty of time. Again, continue to upvote, please. We got lots of questions and they're looking great. Next from Anonymous. So should completed test automation be part of the acceptance criteria on a story, even if it might cause delays in the sprint?
I think there is no right or wrong answer to it, but I think the way you design your test suite, right, is that it doesn't cause delays, right? Like taking a chunk of your regression suite, right? And we earlier talked about breaking up your test and, test what is needed for that specific story. So there are ways to avoid it, and you kind of can have a cadence. So what we do is when we deploy something, we just run part of the test to make sure that their code has not taken the system down. And then we have a cadence to run a full-blown functional test, all the other kind of tests that we run in cadence. So there's a set time and date when we run all those, right? So we just make sure that we don't take the environment down. So of course, when there's let's say there's a set 1, you've got to just do a hot fix. Of course, you got to just make sure that that works. And we are able to do a hot fix, so I'm sure you can figure out your priorities, just say where it fits and, go ahead with your deployments. But one thing I would say is you should never not test. I don't agree with that.
Like to live dangerously.
I was Adam. Yes. So there's actually 2 parts to this question as far as should it be in the acceptance criteria. Honestly, if you look at, if you're following agile methodologies, it's up to the team. If they need it in their acceptance criteria, put it in their acceptance criteria. However, I will challenge the thought that it slows things down. And the reason why I say that is, yes, it may take additional development time to write that test, but you write that test, you get that feedback faster, you're going to be able to put your code out faster, it's going to be less buggy, and guess what? You're going to have more time to work on code. So I don't think slowing things down to write a test is actually slowing things down.
It'll make your future P1 a lot faster to resolve.
Yeah, and I mean, to piggyback on what Janna was saying is, understand your risk, right? What is the risk of not running that test? We were in a very similar situation where we wanted to be first to market on something. So for us, the risk of not making it first to market was actually more than potentially having some defects in our application, just from an optics standpoint. So from our standpoint is we decided to take that full regression test and we actually ran it in production after we deployed. So we could say we deployed before our competitor deployed. So therefore we were first to market. Now we did find some bugs overnight that we had to go back through and actually fix. But for us, the leadership understood the risk, the development team understood the risk of having to stay late or, fix something on the weekend. So it's just about having that communication, especially in Agile, right? Or any sort of iterative type development, have that communication, understand your risk.
Maybe just one other thing is just, it's really important not to have automation like in the next 2 or 3 sprints after the fact, right? You're not prioritizing the automation. So if not having it in the acceptance criteria is allowing you to create technical debt for automation, like that is a bad practice.
100%. All right, woo, upvotes coming in fast. Next question from Anonymous. Would you recommend keeping UI and API automation tests in the same framework or to keep them separate, and why?
I keep them separate just for ease of maintenance, ease of use. I prefer, actually, we have a lot of that stuff separate. Accessibility is separate from our UI, is separate from our security, performance, API testing. So really it's just ease of maintenance and ease of, asking someone to work on them or potentially even run them through the pipeline. Having them all kind of jumbled together, even if you're using test tags, it can make things very difficult for maintenance.
I mean, I agree. I mean, you can use Selenium to do both. We have a lot of clients that are using the PAC tool to do contract testing. So there are better tools, based on API, UI, web, mobile, et cetera. So I think separating them is fine. It's really preference.
We separate because we're pretty back-end heavy. Most of our engineers write in C#, so I want to make sure that we have a framework in C# that works well for them, whereas our front-end engineers program in React Native. I want to make sure that they have a tool that works with that knowledge and that, in that coding language, in that you get the
Words.
point.
It's
Brain, brainy, no worky.
But you're making a great point about like the whole team needs to work in the same language. Like, don't pick a tool or a language for testers because it's easier and it's different than the engineers. So like, it's a great point.
What if your developers do low code?
We're hiring.
We keep them separate too, but for maintenance purpose, it's just easier.
All right. Thank you. Next question from Anonymous. Gosh, this guy's got a lot of questions. I know. You guys can put your name on these. It's okay.
I'll find you later.
Pandy. Can test automation be done without test and quality engineers involved? We have an org where we have 0 testing folks. So how should we introduce test automation? Why are you looking
Janna.
at me? I'm looking at all of you.
So, as I said before, I'm a director of engineering, but I have a quality background. I identify as a tester. I feel like, I identify as she, her. I identify as a tester, a quality person. Anyway, I'm laughing. Don't look at me.
Y'all broken, Janna.
I know.
Congratulations.
Don't look at me. So we do have some engineers, like I said, everybody has an engineering title, who are subject matter expertise in quality. We do have some teams that do not have anybody who is specifically a subject matter expert in quality. So what did I do? I started a quality program where I said, y'all get to choose somebody to represent quality. We call them our quality champions.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, you have been sacrificed. And I turned it into a game. I actually gamified it because what I did is I took all of these, one person from every team, we meet once a month, and I say, okay, we're going to run a game. We're a quality game, so you're going to get points for good quality practices. What do you think those practices should be? And I made them come up with their own criteria because I didn't want to be forcing criteria down on them. I wanted to know what would work within the team. And what I instantly saw happen was quiet crickets at first. And so I threw out an idea. Well, what about 1 point per code coverage in Sonar Cube? Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, and you know what else we could do? We could do, if every PR has a unit test, every PR that has 2 reviewers, and then next thing I know, we'd already gone through an hour and they were still thinking of criteria. These are not people who, like I said, are subject matter expertise in test, but they leveraged my knowledge and they got excited about it. Now, we all know that they can game this. Absolutely can they game this, but it is not about the number of points that they earn.
It's a little bit about the number of points.
Okay, it's a little bit, because they do win a prize. But even then, it's about the points, and they've changed their behaviors. That's what was the whole driving force behind it is, great, I don't care if you get a lot of points. I even told them, we have 50 criteria on here. Choose 5. If you can choose 5 and focus on 5, then switch 5 every sprint. You'll get through all 50, you'll continue to earn points, and it'll be great. And I'm watching us, have fewer escaped defects. I'm watching teams actually collaborate better, and I'm watching our quality across our organization grow.
They were fighting about who got to manage QA so they could keep it up better. Yeah.
So we have clients that have gotten rid of all their testers and just said the engineers are going to do this. You definitely need to have metrics like defect containment so that you're able to keep an eye on quality. But most likely those engineers don't know how to test. So I have seen many clients where the engineers are spending 30-40% of the time like doing testing, but because they don't know the tools, they don't know the approach, or they just test the APIs that they've created. And so when those APIs get integrated, it all falls down. So you definitely need to make sure that those engineers are actually taught how to do testing, you pick the correct tools, and that you have the right metrics in place so that you can see, hey, are we spending too much time on testing? Do we need to create some more efficiencies? Is our quality actually slipping? Do we need to maybe do more with product management so that we have acceptance criteria so we understand the true end-to-end or integration points? So you need to take care of all of those things. Otherwise, at some point, quality is going to be an issue.
And I will add some context around my answer. We are a company of around 250 people.
Mm.
So that makes a huge difference. It's what works for your organization. What I'm doing works great for us. We're small. We can all communicate. But it may not work for a larger enterprise company. It really depends on your company, your culture, and what works for you.
Anybody want to add anything? I have an exciting twofer that you guys are going to love. Part 1, is it possible to completely get rid of manual testing? Do you want part 2 now or later?
Go for it.
Part 2, what do you mean by manual testing?
You need to take this one.
I can do the first one.
All right.
You can. The first one was if you can get rid of
Manual
manual
testing.
I don't think you can ever. At least this is my personal opinion. I don't think you can ever get to 100% automation. And reason why I say that is, if your effort to automate something is larger than doing that work manually, you should not do it. You should not automate something if the effort is too large. So I don't think you can ever achieve 100% automation. There's always going to be some teeny weedy bit that's going to be manual.
I mean, yeah, until an automated script can stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out a sub one for a customer, right? And we're going to need testers.
You don't need to have manual testers. You still need to probably do manual testing, but there are different ways to do manual testing. So can you use your own business users? Can you do, Talia talks about testing in production. Can you use the crowd? So there are definitely ways to do manual testing. And yes, I agree, it still needs to be done. But do you need manual testers? Probably not. Depending on what you're building and blah, blah, blah. But
And you usually tend to have UAT or business users who can actually be manual. They can be
Yes.
testing manually for you, right?
So I part of me dies when I say this, but this is going to be awesome. Part of our problem in this industry, and some of you will know why this is making me cringe, but I'm very happy for it, is we are hurting ourselves by calling it manual testing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It is testing. Now, whether you use tools and automation to facilitate that testing or not should really be contextual.
Mhm.
And that's where we're hurting ourselves. You should not think of yourself as a manual tester. You should think of yourself as an engineer who specializes in testing,
Yep.
who specializes in quality. And the reason why I say that is, like in my organization, if I were to tell my developers that you're doing manual testing, they're going to be like, ew, that's gross. I want to automate that. Or, there's that visceral reaction that we have to automate it all. But if I say, no, you're responsible for you're responsible for testing this, and you're responsible for the quality, it's up to you to determine, you who know this code inside out, backwards, you as a team, to figure out what are the best ways of testing this and go forth.
An automated test can tell you if your button is orange or blue. An automated test can't tell you how your user feels about it. Oh, I guess I should ask like another question. I don't know. Maybe we get Okay, now we actually do have 15 minutes for real this time. So continue to put those questions in, upvotes. Next up from our good friend Anonymous. Can you share more about switching automation solutions and processes versus tools, keeping in mind the amount of time it may take to develop a sophisticated solution? Did we understand what that question was asking?
Are they asking, should you build something versus buy something?
I think they're asking about if you should. Yes, I think it's a build versus buy. We're gonna go build versus buy with this.
Go for it.
Yeah, so it really depends on the problem that you're trying to solve. I mean, there are some great automation tools that just, hook into SAP, for example, that do a really, really good job of that integration. And if you were going to build something like that internally, it's going to take several months. Versus there are some things where, if you're trying to validate APIs, you might be wasting your money going out and purchasing a tool because there's great open source solutions, right? So it's really contextual. So I would work on defining the problem. If you're trying to get it past leadership or the finance team, define your ROI, right? What are you trying to save? A bit of advice is it's really hard to talk about soft savings. For those who are not aware of what soft savings are, if you ever have to push an automation tool, you will learn, but essentially it's, are you saving time? Are you saving, potentially not finding defects in production? Typically finance teams hate soft savings. They want to see hard savings, like number of people that you're allowed to get rid of by implementing automation, which I hate. So, that's another benefit for having something in-house, right? If it's not going to cost a lot of money, if it's something you can leverage open source, then you have the opportunity to potentially implement more solutions than if you're going to go out and purchase something.
You said you guys have a internal test framework and tool, right?
We are trying to get it to solidify for everybody because IBM being a large organization, it's very hard to be like, let's try to do. So in the CI office, we're trying to kind of standardize it. Backing up on what you said, it was very interesting when I joined IBM and when I had to decide a tool and be like, okay, what tool do you want to use for this application? And my manager asked me, because there were a lot of feedback, and my manager asked me, can you tell me the difference between building something from scratch versus buying something? And I just gave him a very basic example. I was like, how about this? Building something from scratch is that, okay, let's say you like a dress. You're basically buying the material, you're getting everything, you're getting the expertise to kind of stitch the dress together and putting in that money and that effort versus buying that dress that you like. So if you have the money or if you have the funding, and if you can, and if you're able to prove the return of investment, go ahead and buy it because the funding's available. If not, this is an option to build it from scratch.
That's
Go ahead. I think it's quite important, but I did want to say, what I was curious about, like when you look at different solutions, for example, low code or no code versus like your custom, like Cypress, right? Because automation can take so long, so let's say you're integrating it with the test management tool, your process. Like, how do you balance the line between switching to say, okay, well, the industry's going this way, so let's just jump to low code, versus well, we really went through a long time to establish making playwright. Do we just keep this because it's going to be complex to reintroduce a different kind of solution? If that makes sense.
Yeah, so the question is about low code, no code, off the shelf tools versus building your own in Selenium or Playwright. And then you've integrated everything into all of the universe, like your test case management tool, et cetera. And when is it worth the effort to switch to something low code, no code? Then you have to redo all of your integrations, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think you really, the answer is it depends. I would not switch just to switch, right? Like if you're using a low code solution and it's working for you, it's fully integrated, okay, then that's the tool that you're going to use. The question is like, how long does it take you to write the tests? How reliable are those tests? How long does a suite run? Like things like that. So if like we have a client today that's using, I think they're using Appium, and like they said, well, the tests are flaky. It takes us a long time. We're struggling finding people with that experience. And so for them, it was, okay, should we switch? Should we switch to, WebDriver? Should we go to Playwright? And then it's a matter of, okay, well, what's the effort that it takes to convert the tests? Well, how long is it going to take when we start to create do tests? And you got to look at all of those factors to say, what's the ROI? If this is my money, where am I going to get some benefit from that?
And if you do decide to switch, usually what I recommend is draw a line in the sand and say, we are going to switch from going here forward. Everything new is going to be in this. It doesn't mean we're going to not run everything old, but everything new going forward needs to be written on this. And if you have to go back, if one of the older tests are flaky, you don't fix it in that language. You rewrite it in the new language. So you start porting it over. And what you'll eventually find is you can do my favorite thing in the world, which is delete tests. I've been told I am the most anti-testing tester out there because I delete tests left and right. If you cannot tell me what purpose that test is serving, my favorite one is when I pull up tests and they're like, oh, wow, I didn't even know we had a test that did that. How does that work? And I'm like, okay, obviously we don't care. So it really helps kind of do that maintenance too. So draw a line in the sand if you are going to switch and switch over that way.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Next question from our good friend Anonymous. Quality feels like a practice where you never fully arrive. How do you set realistic expectations and gain buy-in while also not overpromising?
No. Adam, too, do you want to take that?
I think that is a challenge, right? I think that's sometimes why we get bad reps because people aren't able to articulate like what the definition of done is for testing. And it's like, well, we just keep rerunning tests. We find more defects and it's never ending. And I think that's sometimes a breakdown in our leadership. So you definitely have to understand your company's risk tolerance. What are the critical transactions or features that have to be working within the application, and you have to be able to draw a line in the sand to say, okay, this is what done looks like, and not being able to articulate that, it is a problem that we have to overcome.
Yeah, and I think outside of having the definition done, which I absolutely agree with, you need to set up a continuous learning model, right? Where if you are doing agile, you're doing some sort of iterative development, looking in the retrospective to say, hey, do we have a pattern of the same type of defect or the same type of issue, the same type of interaction between developer and tester going over and over again, and really working, because one of the things that as testers, we're very good at finding patterns, right? We're very good at seeing things, happen over and over again. And if you drive that pattern recognition into a continuous learning model, you can say, hey, if we want to get better and not essentially stub our foot on the same table over and over again, maybe we move it over to the side a little bit as we're walking down the hallway, right? So focusing in on that and really driving that to say, hey, we can do this potentially better by changing this because it happens every single time. I think that helps to lend a little bit more credibility as well to that, things are always breaking or things are always broken.
This is another one where people are going to be like, shake their heads at me. I know, everybody shakes their head at me. So one of my big things and one part of my routine every morning is I get up and I go clean horse stalls. And the reason why I do that is because when I clean horse stalls, I have something that I can finish. It is done. It is complete. And it is actually what I need for my mental health. Because as a tester, I'm never done. You're never done testing. You never get that sense of accomplishment that, yes, I did the thing. I tested all the things, because it's actually mathematically impossible to test all the things. So I highly recommend having something in your life that you can either do on a daily basis or a regular basis that you can actually finish and have a sense of accomplishment. That being said, when it comes to translating that to leadership, I'm honest. I'm like, if somebody asks me how long is it going to take me to test, or are you done testing? My answer is always going to be, how long does it take? 7. What does 7 mean? I don't know. You asked a silly question. I'm going to give you a silly answer. Or if you're asking me, are you done testing? My answer is always going to be no. But I back that up with, okay, here's the deal. This is how many days I have for testing. How many days are you going to give me for testing? This is what I can cover in these many days. You want more coverage? Well, this is how long it's going to take me to do that. Knowing that, yeah, testing is never going to be done. It's never going to be complete, but it's setting that expectation of this is what I can accomplish within the given parameters.
Nice.
I like it. All right. I think this is our last question. It's a good one. Thank you, Anthony Smith, for asking it. Prior to COVID, it was said that manual testing is dead. With the advancement of AI ML tools, is automation coding soon to be dead? And how do we adjust?
I actually think that with the AI tools, we're going to see a pivot back to domain expertise. So I think while we've been focusing on engineering for testing, now that that's going to get a little bit easier or streamlined, it's going to be the domain. Like, do you understand SAP and how it's used, or Salesforce, or insurance? Do you understand claims, adjudication? It's those business processes that are now going to be even more important to understand as a tester. At least my opinion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think if anything, especially in the fintech space, healthcare space, AI is going to make some pretty big changes in the way that those industries interact with customers, which is going to mean that there's going to be more things to test. There's going to be more types of integrations. You're going to have chatbots. You're going to have all sorts of interactions, agents. But there's going to be a lot of focus around how do we validate the agents are behaving properly, right? AI agents, right, with our customers. So yeah, agreed. I mean, I think there's going to be a much larger need on domain expertise. But I mean, honestly, from working with AutoGPT and a few others, like, it makes my life easier. It takes some of the kind of tedious things out, and actually makes me a more effective tester.
I think automation, manual, we can argue about it all day long, but I think quality testing is never going to go away. Like, let's say, I think Adam mentioned that, okay, you can have ChatGPT write a piece of code, but you need to understand what that piece of code does, right? Because that's going to become more brittle. I've seen, I think before ChatGPT came, I think Stack Overflow. I'm sure everybody knows Stack Overflow. And I've seen examples where people just take those pieces of Stack Overflow and just paste it in the code, including the variables. I'm like, come on, you didn't have to, I mean, you didn't even bother to change to make it look like that it's your code. So I think testing, engineering, all of that is not going to go away. And I think with bots and all those things coming up, I think testing is going to expand a lot more, is what I think.
So I love AI. You all see it coming. But the fact of the matter is what drives AI? Data, right? Training data. Where is that training data coming from? Is it coming from a whole bunch of middle-aged white men? Is it coming from women? Is it coming from people who are young, people who are old? What is the diversity in this training data? So I can use AI to help me with my testing. That's fine, but it will never, ever have the same life experiences that I have, that my customers have, all of that. So there's always going to be a need for additional testing, because it just can't know all the things all the time.
All right. I think that's it. A couple of notes before everybody escapes. Those green slips you have sitting around, or else I think they're on the app, those are our feedback forms. If you liked this session, please give us feedback. If you didn't like this session, please give us feedback. That's how we decide what to run or not to run.
You disagree that ogres are not like onions?
Please leave feedback. A huge thank you to our illustrious panel. Thank you so much. A huge thank you to everybody who submitted questions here in person and virtual. We're going to go through, there's still a lot of questions left, I know, so we will do our best to get those addressed as we can. Yeah, thank you all so much, and we'll see you at Lightning Keynotes. We got a few of them up here, so we'll see you soon downstairs.